For billions of years, this mountain has stood firmly on the plains of eastern China. The mountain is a witness to human history. An ancient tribal leader burnt wood on top of the mountain. At that moment, the heavens blessed him with a mandate. The emperors regarded the mountain as a sacred place. Today, people still believe this is the entrance to a fairyland. Souls will eventually return here to complete the cycle of samsara. Mount Tai is located in central Shandong, China. It stretches more than 200 kilometers from east to west, is 50 kilometers wide, and lies within an area of 426 square kilometers. Its highest elevation is 1,545 meters. In ancient times, the Chinese ancestors thought that 5 mountains supported the heavens. People called these mountains 5 great mountains, the easternmost of which is Mount Tai. Mount Tai towers in the east and is first to face the rising sun, so people believe that life must have developed from this naturally blessed geography. Therefore, Mount Tai is known as the most sacred of the 5 great mountains. In Chinese mythology, Mount Tai is an altar accessible to the gods. Legend has it that the 72 ancient emperors held sacrificial ceremonies to the heavens on Mount Tai. Only when the flames and smoke of the firewood touched the sky was kingship granted by heaven. The Dai Temple at the foot of Mount Tai concentrates its ancient buildings in a north-south central axis, 405 meters in length. It was once a place for Chinese emperors to hold sacrificial ceremonies worshiping the heavens and the god of Mount Tai. In the early winter in the year of 1008, After 17 days of trekking, a team led by Song Dynasty Emperor Qianlong came to the Dai Temple. Qianlong said that a god appeared in his dream, guiding him to Mount Tai to submit to divine will. In 219 BC, China's first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, traveled to Mount Tai. He prayed alone on the summit to the heavens above and swept the soil at the foot to express his respect to the mountains and rivers. This was the mysterious sacrificial ceremony to heaven and earth, and it was through this that Qin Shi Huang made it clear to all that his imperial power, a gift from God, was sacred and sacrosanct. Since that time, Mount Tai became the exclusive imperial mountain. After more than 1,000 years, Song Dynasty Emperor Qianlong continued his solemn sacrificial ceremony to heaven and earth on Mount Tai. This large mural was drawn based on Qianlong's sacrificial ceremony to heaven and earth. He put his palms together devoutly before his chest. The mighty general led the vanguard. The civil officials looked humble. The military officers looked imposing. They followed their emperor in the grand spectacle. This is the palace of heavenly blessings, enshrining the god of Mount Tai, with a great number of columns, each gorgeously decorated. The palace is the Dai Temple's main hall. This ancient building, on a tall, wide platform with double eaves and a hipped roof, has the same specifications as the Chinese emperor's palace and is one of the 3 remaining ancient palaces. The Dai Temple's grandness exists because of an emperor's dream some 1,000 years ago. Passing through the Dai Temple and Tian Gate, visitors begin their ascent. The road is soft and gentle, and the atmosphere is quiet. The old-fashioned inscriptions along the road are full of ancient elegance. This is the easy part of the climb. After crossing Cloud Stepping Bridge, the road becomes gradually steeper. The 4 characters carved in the cliff instruct people that a clear spring can wash away all vanity. From the Flying Immortals Archway, the terrain rises suddenly. The winding mountain paths, stretching nearly 1 kilometer, are all slopes above 45 degrees. This is the famous path of 18 turns on Mount Tai. With the climbing process in full rhythm, people can sense their approach to the top. Only through this difficult journey can they reach the place longed for by the soul. Heaven looms above us. The dividing line between heaven and earth is right here. After the South Heaven Gate, along the ridge, people can enter the markets of heaven. The Wonderland is imaginary, but on the top of Mount Tai, people are able to tour the markets of heaven. Old trees grow from the crevices in the rocks, with their thick roots pulverizing the stone. Mount Tai, though composed entirely of rock, has vegetation coverage of up to 80%. A wide variety of seed plants, woody plants, and herbaceous plants from various landscapes. Forests have clear boundaries of vertical distribution. Mount Tai is a perfect home to layered deciduous woods. Mount Tai stands majestically upright from the flat earth. The shape and texture of these rocks are the traces left from a geological age that occurred 2.5 billion years ago. It is a well-defined record of the steps of life on Earth. The 3 distinctive geological faults, like birthmarks, are a record of violent geological changes on Mount Tai. In the spring of 1790, Mount Tai had a special tourist. He was 80-year-old Qing Emperor Qianlong. Qianlong, wearing scholar's clothing, climbed Mount Tai to do something that past emperors had never done. This piece of rock is 30 meters high and 12 meters wide. Qianlong had a poem engraved on the top to praise Mount Tai, which became the largest rock inscription on its peak. Qianlong wrote this poem and proudly declared he had placed his seal on the huge landscape of Mount Tai. Mount Tai not only has emperors and immortals, but is also full of wisdom and poetry. Ancient intellectuals began to leave poems and inscriptions when climbing the mountain. These stone tablets not only demonstrate the fine art of calligraphy, but are a clear indicator of the emotional well-being of the intellectual classes throughout history. Some 2,500 years ago, the greatest Chinese thinker, Confucius, was born near Mount Tai. Legend says that when Confucius was young, he began to climb Mount Tai from here. When he stood on the summit and looked over the mountains, he sighed. Having climbed to the top of Mount Tai, the world below seems small. Later, based on this story, people built this Confucian temple on the top of Mount Tai. They hoped that the concepts of ethics and morality he initiated would exist forever. For centuries, various religions burnt their joss sticks on Mount Tai as well. Among them, Taoism took the lead by cooperating with the emperor's sacrificial ceremonies. Taoism, China's traditional religion, is so named because the Tao is the highest form of faith. Taoism teaches that it is a pleasure to live in the world and that death is painful. Thus, it advocates that people should not struggle for fame and wealth in the secular world and live peacefully through proactive effort. This is the Jade Emperor Temple on the summit of Mount Tai. This temple towers above all the others. There is no way to find exactly when it was built, although it is known that the Ming Dynasty government expanded upon it with treasury funds in 1483. The Jade Emperor enshrined in the main hall is the highest god in Taoism with absolute power over heaven, hell, and earth. The West Hall enshrines a god of Taoism in charge of wealth in both the heavenly and human world. The god of wealth, holding a gold ingot and a jade ruyi, is one of the gods generally found at Chinese homes. Most peculiarly, the Eastern Hall opposite the god of wealth enshrines the goddess of mercy. The goddess of mercy had a great aspiration. Wherever I am, as long as there are still people who are not free from suffering, I vow not to achieve Buddhahood. As early as the 5th century, the Buddhist-style Dai Temple was built on top of Mount Tai. Today, many still chose this temple to offer incense, and believers devoutly spread the Dharma here. In the 7th century, an eminent monk named An Dao Yi came to Mount Tai to preach Buddhism. He transcribed the Diamond Sutra, one of the Buddhist scriptures, in large script on rice paper in the effort of changing the previous method of using paper books. He had a great aspiration to engrave this handwritten Diamond Sutra on the top of Mount Tai while he was still alive. After writing down a paragraph of the Buddhist sutras, his disciples chiseled the corresponding characters in the rocks. This project lasted for decades. The Buddhist Sutra was carved on over 2,000 square meters of rock. This is now the Sutra Rock Valley on Mount Tai, honored as the originator of all rock inscriptions. Carved in the mountain, it remains forever. People can sense the strong religious spirit from the rock inscriptions. In contrast with religious activities, folk festivals are often very spirited. The 15th day of the 3rd lunar month is the birthday of Grandmother Mount Tai. Annually, on the eve of that day, people around Mount Tai will organize various activities for worship on the mountain. This beautifully decorated space is to enshrine Grandmother Mount Tai. According to folklore, hundreds of years ago, she was born in a peasant home. One day, when cutting wood on the mountains, she encountered a god and became immortal under his guidance to help the common people. This small temple on Mount Tai is said to be the place where grandmother Mount Tai became immortal. The Taoists recognized the devotion to this figure amongst the common folk and thus incorporated her into the Taoist system. The Azure Cloud Temple, located on its peak, is the largest temple on Mount Tai. It was built in the 17th century. Grandmother Mount Tai is enshrined here. At first, she presided over fertility. Later, she was said to cure eye disease and was also known as the goddess of eyesight. Finally, she could do everything and was affectionately referred to as the grandmother Mount Tai. Since the 14th century, this goddess created by the common people began to supplant the god of Mount Tai, eventually garnering the most vaunted position on the mountain. Her birthday has finally arrived. Starting from the lowest point on Mount Tai, devout pilgrims need to burn incense in every temple. Over the course of 3 hours, they will climb upward, step by step, eventually reaching the Azure Cloud Temple. As Taoist priests chant the scripture on clarity and stillness, the birthday ceremony of Grandmother Mount Tai begins. The priest lights a paper bag before the statue. Smoke is the signal to communicate with the goddess so as to invite her into the temple. This is the moment when a human communicates with a god, bestowing Mount Tai with a spiritual power to soothe conscious beings. The mountain traversing China's easternmost regions is an open-air temple, which is the first to see the break of day. At this auspicious moment, the sun blends with the heavens and the earth, giving birth to a renewed vitality. Mount Tai, for 5,000 years, has represented the piousness of the Chinese people. In the end, such folk beliefs have made it a sacred place.